Good morning and welcome to the first session on Chapter 5, Market Equilibrium. This chapter is a combination of Chapter 2 and Chapter 4. Why do I say so? Because we are going to combine the factors of consumer behavior and the perfect market competition. There are many factors that we are going to learn here where the consumer and the market combines in order to bring in a perfect market equilibrium altogether. So going forward in this lesson, the first concept that we are going to learn is the state of equilibrium. Now, what do you mean by the word equilibrium? Many times in our life, we come across this word called as balance. We come across a state called as neutral. These are the states that are also accepted in economy. Why? Because the market tends to come to a state of balance, comes to a state of rest at a particular position. That position is where we use the word equilibrium. So market equilibrium is a position where the supply and demand meets. Moment the word supply and demand starts coming into your mind, that is the position where you will see that the price gets equated for a product in the market. So it's very, very important that we start understanding the concept of equilibrium. Now, in the chapter 2, we were speaking about the theory of consumer behavior. In the chapter 4, we were talking about the perfect market. Now, combining both, we are going to arrive here at the state of equilibrium. Why? Because the consumer wants to get a price which he gets satisfied, and the market needs to come to a balance where the supply and demand are made for each other. So that is the situation where the state of equilibrium comes. So this is the point at which the consumer is ready to buy the product at the price that is given by the market to him. State of equilibrium, a very, very important concept for you, both from the exam standpoint as well as from the economic standpoint. So moment a market tends to come to the state of equilibrium, automatically the consumer is ready to buy the product. So I would use the word very clearly here, ready to buy the product. This is very, very important concept for us. So this is that position where you would see that the equilibrium has been attained. So the consumer is now ready and the price is now fixed. Moving forward, we are going to talk about the word excess demand. We have learned about demand, we have learned about supply, but this is the first time we are going to learn about excess demand, which means demand is higher than the supply. This word high or higher is very, very important. What happens when there is more demand? Now, for the consumer, whenever a product is launched in the market, he is not just satisfied with the number of products that gets introduced into the market. The consumer says, I want more, which means consumer is not happy with the quantity. He wants more and more of the product. So the consumer raises the demand in the market. He goes back and says to the firm, whatever quantity you have manufactured is not enough. We want more of you. We want more of the product. So now for the market, a situation arises where supply is lesser, demand is more. So we need to understand here, demand function or the word demand is greater than supply. So this is the situation that you need to understand, where you see that the demand is greater than the supply. So you see that the consumer is ready to take more and more of the products. He is not going to give up on the factors saying that there is a price or there are certain fluctuations or market environment is not working, but now he is in a position where he wants to consume more, where he wants to say that he is happy and he wants to buy more and more. So excess demand is a situation where the demand is more higher than the supply. Moving forward, now excess supply, the next situation that we are going to talk about. What happens when a product is supplied more than it is needed? Now, for example, let's take the case of chocolates. Let's take the case of any FMCG products altogether. Now, all of a sudden, a company like Hindustan Lever Limited suddenly starts manufacturing excess of soaps, shampoos, toothpaste, or any kind of product that they have been manufacturing. This leads to a position called overstock, which means more than the required amount of inventory, required levels of inventory. I have more, which means supply is on the higher side altogether. The demand is only for 10 products, but the supply is for 15 products, which means now the supply is on the higher side. Company is ready to supply more and more of the product, but the demand is on the lesser side. So now what happens in the industry is that though the company is willing to produce, the manufacturers are ready to produce more and more, but there is no demand. The consumers are not ready to buy. The consumers are happy with what is already existing in the market. So it is very, very important for us at this juncture to understand when supply starts going over the demand, it creates an excess supply. So what does it mean to us from an economic standpoint? If the supply is more than the demand, then we start hitting a saturation in manufacturing. This leads to a dead-end situation. Why? Because market gets flooded with a lot of products and the consumer is not ready to buy, and this will lead to a situation where supply gets higher than the demand in the going times altogether. Now, if you start seeing, many a times we would see that companies tend to overstock their own goods. They feel that in the coming years there is going to be a demand. But in case the demand is not created, the demand is not being expected altogether, then all the times what happens here is that the goods remain in the godown, the goods are not moving in the market, consumer is not ready to buy, and automatically there is a fall in the demand altogether. So coming back, excess supply means that when supply is greater than the demand, and now the manufacturing companies need to be cautious because they do not have to create manufacturing anymore, they don't have to create the products anymore, they just have to stop there. Supply is already higher than the demand altogether. Moving forward, we're going to talk about the situation of market equilibrium. Now, here comes the real part of the lesson. What is this market equilibrium all about? We are going to talk about fixed number of firms. I'm going to use this word limited. This is very, very important for us. Now, when you enter a market, let's say the market in Bangalore or Mysore or in Delhi, Mumbai, Calcutta, Chennai, wherever we are, there is a market that is common to all. The market consists of n number of firms. On a reality basis, there are n number of firms who interact daily with the consumers in terms of buying or selling. But then, in a perfect market equilibrium, when we reach the position called as a market equilibrium, we find that there are fixed number of firms. The number of firms are limited in nature. They are not found in excessive, which means that the firms that are existing in the market are predetermined, are pre-calculated. So if there are 100 firms in a market, that means this 100 firms are existing within the given space, within the given viability altogether, and there is not going to be an expansion. So now what happens here is that the market already knows that these are the number of firms which are already existing at a particular price, and they deliver some goods to the consumer. So every one of these 100 firms have got their own product, and they are delivering that product at a particular price. So the place is fixed, the number of firms are also fixed, the buyers and sellers are also pretty much fixed. So the market is in a complete equilibrium state. So you will not be able to move here and there. You are in a fixed position, and you know that the market is receiving it on a perfect balanced end altogether. Moving forward, determination of the wage in labor market. Now, why do people work? People work for salary. People work for wages. So it becomes very important for all of us to understand how do we determine the wage factor in a labor market. If you look at India, it is a country which has got hundreds and thousands of people who work as daily wages, daily laborers altogether. All these daily laborers work for a particular wage. That wage might range from 100 rupees to 1000 rupees a day. But how do we as a common man try to understand the rate of wage that is being fixed for a laborer on a daily basis or on a monthly basis? So how does this concept of wage fixation happen in our country? Now, to understand this, first of all, we need to understand the nature of work. Now, every company will provide some kind of employment to people. Now, this is very, very important. Why? Because the household sector in our country are the providers of laborers, which means to say that every household in India, there will be some person who will go to the market or who will go to an office and start working. Once he starts working, he will try to earn some wages or salary and try to help his family. So the household sector will provide labor to the industry. So every person in the home will try to do some job, earn some money and bring it back to his family. So in that case, the nature of work matters a lot. What kind of work the industry is offering to the labor. Now, when you know that, there are factors like skilled, semi-skilled and unskilled factors. Now, every kind of job that is being done in the market is categorized under these three categories. So, you have a skilled job, you have an unskilled job, and you have something called as semi-skilled job. So all these three have their own levels, have their own means of achieving a particular target in the job. If you are a skilled employee, automatically your levels of wages will be higher. If you are a semi-skilled employee, your levels of labor, that is your payment level, will be based on that. If you are an unskilled employee, you will get a wage according to that. Now, apart from this, economics also tells you a very, very important factor altogether. What is that factor? Economics tells you that when the laborers enter the market seeking job, seeking a particular kind of job, a particular nature of work, the industry will see what kind of work can be extracted from the laborer. What is that in return they can do? So suppose the nature of skill that the laborer has is on demand, is the need of the hour on that particular day, on that particular month altogether, the industry will try to absorb the labor at a fixed rate, at a rate that is on par with the market, and start paying them so that they are able to manufacture and the industry is able to earn their revenue. On that particular day, if the need of the hour is not your skill set, is not the kind of skill that the market is looking for, automatically the wages will come down. So the economic condition of any market determines the nature of work and the amount that needs to be paid for that nature of work. So it is very, very important when the household sector supplies the labor to the industrial sector, that is to the workforce altogether, the industry will also decide and take the workforce. It is not mandatory for the manufacturing sector that since there is labor available, since there is workforce available, we will absorb everybody into the company. In the real life scenario, just to give you an example, now you would have seen that post the crisis, post the emergency that we have been able to see in our country, we see that a lot of people are left jobless. Now many people want to return back to their work, but the problem or the exact situation in the industry is that they are not in a position to afford giving jobs to everybody. The reason is that there is not much of demand, there is not much of need for everybody to come back and start working. So that's exactly what you need to know here, is that only when the industry starts seeking the demand factor that they need more people and they are ready to pay for the nature of work that is altogether, then there would be a wage determination factor that happens in the labor market. Be it any kind of labor market, it is not only for India, across the globe, every country will have a standard of pay. So they will decide what kind of payment needs to be given to the kind of laborers who are involved in different sectors altogether. Going forward, we are now going to talk about the marginal revenue product of labor. I once again repeat, marginal revenue labor product of labor. This is very, very important. Why? Extra unit of labor, and that will result in the additional benefit of labor obtained, or the additional benefit that is being obtained by the sector. Now why is this important? When the industry decides that we are going to take more people because there is a demand factor coming up in the market, they will start understanding that we need extra units of labor, which means we need more and more people to come and work. Now, when more and more people are employed for the same kind of job, automatically there will be a benefit. The benefit is in terms of output, because more the labor, more the output, more the revenue. It's a simple equation. More labor, more output, more revenue. For example, tomorrow Maruti car industry suddenly decides that there is a huge demand coming up for its new version of car, then automatically Maruti will try to produce more and more cars in the market. Now how will Maruti do that? They will employ a lot of people in their industry, by which they will increase the output of cars. If they increase the output of cars, that is, they are increasing their production altogether, they will also increase on the sales revenue altogether. So that's very, very important for us. So every time when you employ an extra labor, there will be an additional benefit altogether. Why? Because you will see that moment the workforce starts going up, the output will also start going up, and there will be an additional benefit that will also be obtained by the company and by the employee. This is very, very important. Even from the exam standpoint of view, please keep in mind the marginal revenue product of labor. This is an important question that will be repeated in your exams. Moving forward, we are now going to talk about the calculation of marginal revenue product of labor. Now, how are we going to calculate? We are going to calculate the wages which is equal to marginal revenue product of labor, which is equal to the value of marginal product of labor. What do we mean by saying this? Every time when a laborer, when a person who is working tries to put in an extra effort, that will be equal to the value of the product, which means to say that the every single extra effort that is being put by the employee towards the organization in terms of producing an output will be a direct benefit to the organization as well as to him. How does this come into picture? Which means every time an employee tries to work more and more, the concept of working above the time will also lead to payment and will also lead to the output in terms of manufacturing. So that extra piece of work comes with a little bit of extra cost, which will be a benefit to the organization as well as to the employee in the long run. So that is why in a country like India, where we see millions of workers are ready to work extra, are ready to take up multiple jobs because they understand the concept of marginal revenue product of labor. The more you work, the more you extend, the more you produce, automatically you get more. So which means to say that a laborer understands the factor very clearly that moment he is ready to put in extra effort, moment he is ready to put in that extra bit of labor altogether, the work altogether, he will be able to earn more. So the marginal revenue product of labor is equal to the value of marginal product of the labor. So that revenue is a product of the direct work that you have done there. So more the revenue, which is equal to more the labor altogether. So every time when the industry wants to increase its revenue, one of the most important factor that the industry has to keep in mind is that the labor factor. If they get the labor factor on time and if people are ready to work, automatically the output will increase, the revenue will also increase, and in the long run the company can see growth and progress. So my dear students, this is a very important for us concept in terms of understanding why MRPL and how do we need to calculate the marginal revenue product of labor. With this, we come to the conclusion of today's session. Thank you for joining me on this wonderful and interesting session on Chapter 5, the Market Equilibrium. In the coming class, the next class, we are going to see about the shift in demand and supply, and there will be few graphs for us to understand. Until then, thank you. Goodbye from my side. Stay tuned, stay learn, and be enlightened. Thank you once again for joining me today.